You begin in the darkness. Not the kind you see, but the kind you feel. It's the kind that follows you home, lies beside you in silence, and reminds you everything you loved is gone. It wasn't just a loss, it was a theft. Piece by piece, they took it all, your dignity, your belief, your fire. But here's what they never expected. That buried beneath all that pain was a beast quietly rebuilding itself. And now, you don't want revenge. You want evolution, so don't look away. This isn't a story about bouncing back. It's about burning down the old version of yourself and rising into something they can't even recognize. Watch till the end, because what's coming isn't inspiration. It's a blueprint for rebirth. Subscribe, like, and stay with me through every lesson. You don't forget the moment your world ends. Not because it's loud, but because it's silent. Everything freezes. Time doesn't move forward. It doesn't move backward. It just stops. You stand there, staring at the wreckage of something that once meant everything to you. Person, a dream, a belief, and all you can think is, how did it get here? But here's the part no one tells you. It's not the scream that breaks you, it's the silence that follows. The silence of people who swore they'd stay. The silence of answers that never came. The silence in your chest where they're used to. Be fire. This is where numbness begins. Not as a choice. As a reflex, because if you did let yourself feel the full weight of that collapse, you'd drown in it. So you go quiet. You move through your days with a face you don't recognize. You smile when you're supposed to. You say, I'm fine so well. Even you start to believe it, but inside something's different now. Trust gone. Hope. Waiting. You don't even remember what peace felt like anymore. You just remember the moment it left. Remember how quickly everything that felt permanent, solid, safe, shattered. And that's the moment you stopped being the person you were. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still listening, which means some part of you, no matter how small, is ready to go back. Not to the life you lost, but to that moment. Because this time, you're not going back to break. You're going back to own it. See, you can't rebuild if you pretend nothing happened. You can't move forward if you skip over the collapse. You have to step into the ashes with your eyes open and say, yes, this is where it ended. This is where I broke. And this is where I let go. Because what you don't face controls you. And you've been controlled by that moment. Long enough, not because you're weak, but because you were never shown how to face something like this. No one teaches you how to stand in your own ruins without shame. No one tells you that clarity is forged in devastation. But here's the truth most people never realize. That moment, the one that broke you, was also the moment the lies died. The illusions fell. The masks dropped. You were left with only you, raw, real, unprotected. And that's not the end. It's the beginning. Because now you don't need the fantasy. You don't need the comfort of pretending. Seen what breaks. You've seen who leaves. And from this point forward, what you rebuild will be real. It's not based on trust handed out to easily. It's not based on borrowed strength. It's but built from the wreckage you refuse to run from. You don't have to heal all at once. You just have to stop. Pretending it didn't happen. The moment everything shattered wasn't your ending. It was your origin story. And the version of you that's rising now, they don't even see it coming. There's a part of you that still waits. You won't admit it out loud, but it's there. You wait for someone to notice how tired you are. You wait for someone to understand the things you don't say. You wait for that moment, that miracle where someone steps in and says, I've got you. And when they don't, you don't break all at once. Just start folding. Inward, a little less trust, a little more silence. You stop asking for help, not because you're strong, but because hope has turned into something that hurts. That's the quiet truth most people carry. We keep waiting for someone to pull us out of the dark without realizing. No one's coming. Not because people are cruel, but because no one sees the war you're fighting inside. Because you learned how to wear your pain like armor. And because deep down, maybe you're still hoping someone will love you enough to figure it out. But here's the truth that changes everything. The one most people avoid because it hurts more than the lie. No one is going to rescue you. And once that sinks in, It feels like betrayal. You start asking, why didn't they see me drowning? Why didn't they care enough to stop me from falling? But those questions don't lead anywhere. They just keep you stuck because the moment you stop waiting, the moment you truly accept that no one's coming, is the moment you start becoming someone who doesn't need saving. That doesn't happen with hope. It happens with brutal, raw honesty. It's a kind that forces you to stop romanticizing rescue and start building survival. The kind that makes you pick yourself up. Not because you feel strong, but because you've run out of other options. This is where something shifts inside you. You start hearing your own voice again. Not the broken one. Not the one begging. The one that says, get up. The one that's been buried under years of noise and need. And in that moment, you don't feel heroic. You feel angry, exhausted, cold, but you're moving. Finally, you're moving. Not for anyone else, not for the hope of being seen, but because you finally understand your life is your responsibility. Your peace is your fight, and no one's going to win it for you. This isn't the fairy tale ending you imagined. This is real. This is you becoming your own weapon, your own shelter, your own rescue. Because the myth of being saved was never about them. It was about you. Not knowing you were enough to stand alone, but now you do. And from this point forward, everything changes. They told you to calm down, to breathe, to let it go, to forgive for your own peace. But you weren't ready for peace. You weren't ready to sit still while the fire inside you screamed to be heard, because what you felt wasn't just pain, it was injustice. It was betrayal. It was the sound of everything breaking inside you and everyone around you pretending. It was no big deal, so they called you bitter. Too emotional, too intense, as if your anger was some kind of weakness, as if you didn't have the right to feel exactly what you felt. But the truth is, anger wasn't the problem. Anger was the only part of you that refused to die. When everything else went numb, when your trust cracked, when your hope went quiet, anger stayed, burned. It kept you alive. You're not broken because you feel deeply. You're not lost because you're mad at what they did or what they didn't do or what they should have protected you from. You're human. And for the first time in a long time, you're honest about it. Here's what no one ever said to you. Anger is not poison. It's power. But power without clarity. That's where destruction begins. And that's the shift. You don't have to destroy anything. You just have to stop hiding the part of you that still remembers the cost of what you survived. Because that anger, it's trying to show you something. It's telling you where the wound still lives. It's pointing you toward the part of your life that still needs your protection. The moment you stop fighting it, the moment you stop trying to stuff it down, lock it away, mask it with forced forgiveness, you realize something. You don't have to wait to feel healed to move. You don't have to be clean, calm, and clear before you rebuild. You just have to start. Use it. Use the anger to set a boundary. Use it to create distance where there's been damage. Use it to stop begging for closure from people who were never capable of giving it. Because this isn't about rage. This isn't about revenge. It's about finally trusting yourself again. It's about honoring what you felt instead of apologizing for it. You don't need to be soft right now. You need to be real. When that fire inside you is no longer trapped behind shame, when you allow it to move through you instead of against you, it doesn't just burn. It builds. It builds someone strong, sharp, untouchable. So no, anger is not your enemy. It's your edge. It's your signal. When you learn to hold it with clarity, it becomes the force that shapes the version of you no one saw coming. It gets quiet after the fallout. Not right away. First there's noise. Arguments. Silence that cuts deeper than words. It's the feeling of being surrounded by people and still invisible. But eventually it all fades, and what's left? Just you. First, it feels like punishment. You start wondering if maybe it's your fault. Maybe you're too intense, too guarded, too much. So you replay conversations. You search their words for clues. You scroll through memories trying to find the moment they began to drift, or worse, stopped pretending they cared. And when no answer comes, you sit with the silence. That long, heavy silence that fills the room and wraps around you like a question you can't answer. You think you're broken, because we're told that being alone means something's wrong. That if you were whole, You'd be surrounded by people, loved, understood, chosen, but no one ever talks about what happens when the world finally quiets down. No one prepares you for the moment you're forced to meet the version of yourself that only shows up when no one else is watching. At first, it's brutal. There's nowhere to run, no distraction to numb you. It's just you, and everything you've been trying to avoid. But then something unexpected happens. You start noticing things. You hear your own voice again. You start catching the lies you've been telling yourself. You see patterns, the way you shrink to make others comfortable, the way you chase people who never show up, the way you apologize for needs you never should have hidden. And as painful as that awareness is, it's yours. No one else handed it to you. No one else shaped it for you. You earned it. Alone. That's when you realize solitude isn't weakness. It's a weapon, a brutal one, or a cleansing one. Because when the world stops talking, you start hearing truth. You begin to rebuild. Not for approval, not for acceptance, but for clarity. No? You make decisions without second-guessing yourself through someone else's lens. You stop bending to keep the peace. You stop explaining your worth. And for the first time, you're not surviving loneliness. You're using it. Because there's power in becoming someone who doesn't rely on noise to feel whole. There's strength in waking up and knowing that whether someone stays or leaves, you don't disappear with them. You stay, you remain. People will come and go, and one day they'll notice that the version of you they walked away from didn't vanish. It sharpened. It evolved in the silence. It learned to listen to its own voice above all others. So no, you're not broken because you're alone. You're dangerous because you're no longer afraid of it. This solitude didn't destroy you. It carved you. What's rising now doesn't beg to be seen. It chooses when and if it wants to be visible. There's a grief no one prepares you for. The kind that doesn't come from losing someone else, but from losing yourself. Not all at once. It happens in fragments. Quietly, you wake up one day and realize the things that used to matter just don't. The people you fought to keep, you don't chase them anymore. The dreams you swore you'd die for, they don't feel like home now. And the person in the mirror, you don't fully recognize them, and yet they feel more honest than the one who came before. This is the part they don't talk about. The part of growth that feels like dying, because it is. Growth demands sacrifice. And sometimes what you have to sacrifice is who you used to be. But it's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not a big cinematic ending. It's subtle. A shift in how you respond. It's a silence where there used to be a reaction. A boundary where there used to be a need for approval. And it's lonely, because no one claps for you when you start breaking your own patterns. No one sees the war you fought just to stop explaining yourself. No one feels the weight of letting go of an identity you wore for so long it felt like your skin. You'll feel guilty for changing, for wanting different things, for not fitting in the space you once begged to belong to. You'll try to shrink back into your old self because it's familiar, because it's safer, because it doesn't threaten anyone. But you can't stay there anymore. That version of you, the one who tolerated, who chased, who softened their truth to keep the peace they were necessary. They got you here. They survived things the world will never know. But they weren't meant to build the next chapter. They were only meant to get you to the edge of it. And now you're here, standing in the doorway of something new, and you can't take them with you, so you bury them, not with shame, not with bitterness, but with honor. Because they were never weak. They were just limited. And you've outgrown the limits. This isn't just a goodbye. It's a release. You're not rejecting who you were. You're releasing who you no longer need to be. And yes, it hurts. But beneath that pain is something clean, something quiet, something real. You're not losing yourself. You're letting the false version die. So the real one, the undeniable one, can finally begin to live. That's not weakness. That's the purest kind of strength. There's a moment where you stop explaining. It's not because you've healed, but because you're done asking for permission to exist. You spent too much of your life waiting for someone to get it, for someone to see your pain and say, I would have fallen too. You waited for understanding like it was oxygen, but it never came. And the longer you waited, The more invisible you became, even to yourself, you started believing that maybe you needed approval to rise. Maybe your rebuilding needed witnesses. Maybe your comeback needed to look a certain way. Soft, presentable, acceptable. But that's not how real rebuilding works. Because the truth is, healing is ugly. Rebuilding is silent. And growth, it's almost always misunderstood. You don't rise in applause. You rise in silence alone, with no one to clap, no one to notice, and no one to say, now is the time. You just get up one morning and decide you're tired of living in pieces. You don't wait for people to approve of your next move, you make it. Don't ask if it's okay to shift, to change, to want more. You shift anyway. You build anyway. And every single brick you lay, every single step you take, you carry the weight of being misunderstood. And you do it without complaint. Because somewhere deep inside, this life doesn't belong to the version of you they're comfortable with. It belongs to the version you fought like hell to become. You carry your scars openly now, not to prove a point, but because hiding them felt like another form of begging. Another way of asking, is this version of me easier to love? And you're done asking that? You're done softening the edges of your story just so someone else can feel comfortable in your presence. You're not building for their acceptance. You're building for your freedom. It's not loud. It's not glamorous. But it's real. And one day they'll look at you, standing solid, clear, unshaken, and wonder how you did it.
How you rose with no audience.
How you built something out of silence, out of nothing, out of the wreckage they never even noticed you crawled through. But they'll never understand because they weren't there. They didn't see the nights you broke down quietly and still got up the next day to fight. They didn't feel the weight of rebuilding with hands that were still shaking, or did. So no, you don't need validation, you don't need their understanding, and you sure as hell don't need their permission. This is your life. This is your rebuild. The only person who needs to believe in it is you. There was a time you tried to explain yourself, tried to be softer, clearer, more digestible. You broke yourself down into pieces just so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable around your truth. You handed them access to your mind like it was some open hallway, hoping maybe, just maybe, if they could walk through it, they'd finally understand you. But they didn't. They never did. And somewhere along the line, you started to realize they were never listening to understand. They were listening to place you, to categorize you, to shrink you into something they could define, predict, and dismiss. And that's when the shift started. Not out of anger, no, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. A quiet moment where it finally clicked. You don't owe them your explanation. You don't need their agreement. You don't even need to be understood. You just need to be you unapologetically, completely. Even if that means becoming unreachable to the version of them who only knew the broken, edited, smaller version of you. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone can handle the version of you that's not begging to be seen. When you stop performing, when you stop justifying, when you stop molding yourself into something they recognize, you become foreign to them, and that's okay. Let them miss the version of you they could control. You're not hiding. Not building walls. You're just not inviting chaos into the spaces you fought so hard to make peaceful. You've outgrown the conversations that go nowhere. You've outgrown proving your worth to people who only value comfort, not growth. You've outgrown the version of you that thought survival meant shrinking. Now, you move different. Speak less, but feel more. You watch more than you respond. Not because you've lost your voice, but because you've reclaimed your energy. You've learned that silence is not weakness, it's preservation. You've learned that presence doesn't mean availability. Most of all, you've learned that the most powerful version of you will never be the most accessible one. They'll say you changed, that you're cold, distant, hard to reach. Let them, because becoming unreachable isn't about being cruel, it's about refusing to return to who you were just to make them comfortable. You didn't burn bridges. You built walls where there were once revolving doors. You didn't disappear. You evolved. And that evolution made you invisible to those still looking for the older version of you. This is what real power feels like. Not in the noise, not in the validation, but in the calm, the quiet, the complete detachment from needing anyone to get it. You're not above them, you're just past them. And the ones who are meant to grow with you will find you where you are now, the rest. They'll keep reaching for a version of you that no longer exists. No one sees it. Not the war, not the struggle, not the chaos you walk through every damn day with a straight face. You wake up, move through life, make it look easy, while inside you're dodging battles no one even knows you're fighting. But that's the point, isn't it? You stopped screaming a long time ago. You stopped explaining, justifying, proving. Because you learned that silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. There was a time you wanted people to see your pain, feel your truth. You used to think that being heard was the same as being respected. But life has a brutal way of teaching you that the loudest cries are often ignored, and the quiet ones, those silent screams, are where the real strength is built. Now, you're in a different kind of war, not one with fists, or words, or social battles. This war is internal. It's the one where you fight your own reactions, where you starve your ego, where you learn not to respond just to be seen, but to hold your fire for something that matters more. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to fix how people see you. You learn to sit in discomfort. You learn to listen. You learn to wait. Discipline becomes your shield. Patience, your sword. You start to realize that real control isn't about dominating others. It's about not letting the chaos around you reach the calm inside you. It's strange. The stronger you become, the less you need to say. The louder your peace gets, the more silent you become, and people notice it. They can feel it when you walk into a room, not because you're loud. It's not because you're flashy, but because there's something unshakable in you now. You don't clap back. You don't chase closure. You don't trade your dignity for attention. You just show up. It's different. You live your life like a code only you understand. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. Because when you've truly mastered the quiet war, you don't come back to prove them wrong. You don't rise to make noise. You rise because silence taught you who you are, and nothing. Nothing is more terrifying to the world than someone who doesn't need it. They hurt you. Let's not pretend they didn't. Let's not sugarcoat it, or slap a label over the wound and call it a lesson. No, they shattered something inside you that you may never get back. And for the longest time, you've been trying to heal. Trying to fix what was broken, trying to stitch yourself up into who you were before. But let's be honest, do you even remember who that was? You weren't built for healing. You weren't meant to rewind, repair, and return. You were meant to become. What happened to you wasn't fair, and I know you didn't ask for it, but you're here now, standing in the aftermath, carrying the pieces. And maybe you've been trying to glue yourself back together quietly, maybe hoping that one day you'll feel whole again, like the pain never touched you. But you're not supposed to feel the same. You're not here to return to who you were before the fire. You're here to step out of it reborn, unrecognizable, even to your past self. Healing says, let me find peace. But transformation says, let me become something the pain couldn't predict. And that's what this moment demands of you. Not comfort, not calm, but evolution. You don't need to erase the scars. You need to own them. Because those scars, they didn't just mark what happened, they built the version of you that doesn't beg for approval anymore. That doesn't chase closure or wait for an apology, or sit still in silence hoping someone sees your worth. You stopped needing to be understood the moment you realized they couldn't even comprehend the storm inside you. And why should they? You're not the same. You outgrew the version of yourself that broke. You don't rise by fixing the past. You rise by outgrowing it. And that's the difference between healing and transforming. Healing looks backward. Transformation stares dead into the present and makes a decision to stop reacting, to stop replaying, to stop holding the shattered version of yourself like it's the final chapter. You are not a cracked mirror trying to reflect who you used to be. You are something entirely new, sharper, quieter, and much harder to break. So don't waste another second asking, why did they do this to me? Start asking, who am I now that they did? Because this isn't about healing. It's not anymore. It's about becoming something their damage never accounted for. Something they could never control, never cage, never kill. You're not here to return to peace. You're here to become the storm that peace cannot ignore. You used to flinch at their silence. Used to lose sleep over a look that didn't feel right. One cold word. One missed call. One post that didn't include you, and suddenly your whole world tilted. It's not because you were weak. It's because you still cared. You were still tied to them, still handing them the remote control to your peace, hoping they'd choose not to press play on your suffering. But here's what you didn't see back then. It was never about healing what they broke. It was about waking up to the truth that you've always been building something they'd never understand. Not a comeback, not revenge, but distance. A kind of distance so deep, so complete, that one day, even if they screamed your name, it wouldn't echo where you live now. See, people think the story ends when you succeed, when you get the money, the love, the recognition. But that's just noise. The real ending is silence. Not the silence they used as a weapon, but the kind you earn when you finally detached so fully they can't even find the version of you that used to care. There was a time you were waiting for closure, waiting for them to see you, understand you, maybe even regret what they did. But that was the old you, the version still hoping they had the power to make it right. Now you've outgrown the very conversation. Now you understand their validation was just a distraction. Their betrayal was just a doorway. And their absence, a gift because something changed. Slowly, without applause, without anyone noticing, you stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped hoping for them to feel anything. And in that stillness, you began to rise. Not louder, not brighter, just higher. Above the noise, above the story. They can't reach you now, not because you've blocked them, but because they were never meant to stand in the version of you that chose peace over war. Not victory over them, but freedom from needing them to lose. You don't chase anymore. You don't play games. You don't sit in rooms where your name tastes like dust in someone else's mouth. You walk past it all. Not with arrogance, not with bitterness, but with the quiet knowing that your presence no longer depends on being understood, and they'll feel it.
Oh, they'll feel
It. Not through your words, not through your achievements, but through the silence where you used to scream. It's through the calm where you used to spiral. It's through the peace that no longer requires them to ruin it for it to matter. You've become untouchable. Not because you've built walls, but because you've become air, too wide, too free, too beyond. They can talk. They can lie. Can try to recreate the version of you they once knew. But that version burned. And from those ashes, you became something they cannot touch. And this is where the story ends. Not with applause, not with revenge, but with you. Finally living a life they have no access to. No entry. No impact, no echo, just silence. But you still, grounded, untouchable.